titled Gendered Religious Spaces, Locating Challenges and Opportunities for Women in Christianity, what evidence shows us. So the reason why I'm saying I have mutilated it is because I have made it specific to a certain church and the work of that church thereof, and to a specific field, that is peace building. So I'll speak to the work of the Catholic Church in peace building, but then we will pay attention to the position or the place of women in that process. And so the context is that I'll speak partly from a research that we just did a while back between 2018 and 2020 on a model that is applied by the Catholic Church in peace building work. So I speak partly from that experience, but also partly from my experience with community development work. Let me say this, and this is a disclaimer. My presentation should not be misunderstood. The Catholic Church is doing quite a lot of work in peace building, and specifically in this area that I have decided to focus on, that is the North Rift. They started their work there in 1991, 1992, when ethnic violence broke up, or when violence broke up in Kenya. For those who are Kenyans, you might know the reason for this. When Kenya became a multi-party system, and there was use of ethnic violence as a weapon for, political reasons, so that whoever needed to win could win through ethnic violence. And so for that reason, violence began in different parts of the country, including the North Rift. And so the Catholic Church has done quite a lot of work. We will see the model that they have been using in this peace building work. So my presentation should not be misunderstood that the Catholic Church is not working. What I am doing in this presentation is just to pick on a few loopholes that we see, and as a way of helping us reflect from the communities and organizations where we are coming from, reflect on the models that we are using, and ask ourselves, what is the role of women in these models, and how do we position women within these models? So I pick on a few strategies just to explain how women are finding or are positioning themselves, given the challenge that we have within the gendered spaces in the church, but also the gendered spaces within culture. And very soon we will see that culture in itself is limiting to the spaces that are there within the religious environment. So this is just a case presentation of peace work, conflict and peace building. You could situate it with the work that you're doing as an individual and as communities and as organizations to see how then you could pick a few lessons, and it is for us to learn together from this presentation. So the region North Rift has quite a number of counties, and I have listed them there. There are about 6 or 7 counties. And there are 3 main conflicts within this region. The land and border conflicts. And people don't just fight about borders. There is a reason why a border conflict would arise. For instance, if there is a resource that is key within that border, and so people start fighting for that particular resource. Cattle rustling, which was culturally some kind of a sport, and people enjoyed it. But now it's become something else. In fact, as I speak currently, Turkana and West Pokot are on Kenyan news. For those who are Kenyans, you've been seeing news highlighting that people are dying every other day in that area. And also resources, as I said, that you have water, we don't have. You have pasture, we don't have, and we need that pasture. So then that becomes, a reason for people to fight. So the Catholic Church in itself is not restricted within the borders of counties. The Catholic Church, how dioceses, for those who are Catholics or Anglicans, how dioceses work. They don't work within the national boundaries. They traverse within their own jurisdictions. Their areas are not defined by those boundaries. And so for that reason, the Catholic Church, which has the headquarters in Eldoret, traverses the whole of this region, the whole of these counties. So let's narrow down to women and conflicts. Conflicts do not discriminate. Both men and women, girls and boys, children suffer the effects of conflicts. But there are special kind of experiences that women go through in times of conflicts and when, communities are fighting. And women are targeted for various reasons. They are abducted to serve as, cooks in the forest or sex slaves and so on. For sexual violence, they are impregnated for various reasons. And this mid-morning and afternoon, we were discussing this in our group. So I see this as an extension of what we were doing in our various groups. So these are some of the injustices that women suffer. But then they have a central place. Irrespective of what they go through, they have to take care of the affected. They are nursing the elderly, the injured, their raped daughters, themselves, and the community at large. Yet, when it comes to decision making and sitting around those tables where decisions are being made about peace and peacemaking processes, then women are not on those tables, or they are rarely represented in those tables. And you'll find discourse, femininities and masculinity discourse, that then affirm that kind of discrimination of women. So the church itself finds its placement within this community where there is culture of patriarchy. And so in one way or another, it is forced to operate within those confines and within those dictates of culture. And so the inequalities thereof are likely to continue irrespective of whether they are church structures or not. Because who is the church? Who is the church? The church is the community members who are coming from these structures, who are coming from these cultural backgrounds, from these patriarchal kind of setups. So whatever happens in these cultures is most likely translated and finds placement within the church environment. And for that reason, then we ask, as people who are working with women within our communities, how do we structure the models that we use for peace building, for fighting gender-based violence, for speaking to HIV and AIDS? How are those models structured? I am not sure that my colleagues at the very back will be able to see this. I have tried to make it as large as I could. This is the Amani Mashinani model of peace building. Amani Mashinani means peace at communities' grassroots. And it is a 12-step model that was coined from the experience that one bishop, who is now a late Bishop Cornelius Korir, who has been working, or who had been working in the North Rift since 1991, 1992, at the beginning of violence. So he coined this 12 steps model as a way of saying that when violence or when conflicts arise, there is a way in which we can think through them. There is a way in which we can work through those conflicts. So it begins at the point when he's saying, let us look at the situation, let's do an analysis, and let's start intervening and see whether we can stop the violence in one way or another. So this is the beginning: analysis, intervention, and interruption of the violence. Then it moves to giving immediate support or protection, sanctuary, and relief for those who are suffering. Then once that is done, once the immediate needs are taken care of, let us now begin speaking one-on-one to understand where the problem is, and then we start resolving the problem. Then it moves on to small groups. Let's move from one elder from each community to now a smaller group from each community. And then, as a sign of saying that we are good, to start building the peace within our communities, sharing of food, which is symbolic to Africans. It has a meaning. Let's share food. And then now broaden the groups to intra-ethnic meetings. And then we start airing our grievances, saying, you have wronged me in this way, this is why I am fighting you, and so on and so forth. I might not have time to go through each of these steps. So the question for me, and which is important here, is where are women? Where are women within this model? This morning we had ground rules. One of the rules that I remember, and sorry I'm a teacher, is that no one should sleep. So if I see you sleeping, you will dance, okay? So the question for us is, looking at this model of 12 steps, because it is a very well articulated model, where do women fall? Who is doing this analysis here? Who is doing protection and providing sanctuary, and what is happening here? Who is on the one-on-one meetings? Who is in these meetings? Who is supposed to share food, and who is providing for this food? So in our research and analysis of this, what we saw is that it is the obvious kind of patriarchal system, all right? So you will not find women here. You will find them here because they are victims and they are being provided sanctuary, all right? You will not find them here. In fact, here we are talking of elders who are men in the community. You will not find them here because this one is just a bigger version of this one. But you will find them here. What are they doing here? They are cooking. They are cooking for these guys to share food, all right? They are here. Intra-ethnic meetings, then we start bringing one or two, all right? We start bringing one or two. Look at this from the perspective of, this is one ethnic group, this is another ethnic group. They are fighting each other. And so we need to find a solution to resolve their conflicts. So you only start finding women around here. And they are called as representatives when grievances are being aired. All right? So you go along, and the only places where you find women is, you know, the very places that we know where women are placed when it comes to discussions around important issues. And so it seems, and this is a church-led model. So the people who are driving this agenda begin here, because they are the people who are meeting the bishop. So the bishop will say, go and bring me 2 elders from the 2 communities. You will not find a female who is an elder, because culturally, and especially in that part of the, you know, the country where this is being done, culturally, women do not sit in high panel meetings, all right? So on the overall, looking at the 12 steps, there are only a few places where you would find women. You will not find them in signing of social contracts. Signing of social contracts means that we have agreed and we have a way forward. So let's now sign and put this in a contract form. It is not women who will be signing those contracts. The only social thing that you will find a woman doing is where we are talking about marriage, inter-ethnic marriage. So a woman could feature there, all right? And you would also find women in the Peace Connector projects, where we are saying, because we've been fighting, let's see whether we can put a bridge across these two villages that hosts different ethnic communities. So they can provide labor, they can cook for the men who are, doing that kind of work. So, friends, this is a way of saying that there is a way in which we are doing things from our various organizations and communities where we are at. It is important then for us to start evaluating and asking ourselves, are our models that we are applying right? Are they okay? Is there anything we can do about them? Are there things that we have not been doing that are important for us to start thinking about, so that then we perfect and make sure that the women's rights and their voices are well accounted for in those models, right? And if it is a woman's or women's kind of activity going on, can we think about men? And ask ourselves, what is the position of men in this agenda that we are driving? How far will we go as women if we exclude men from our agenda? This morning, there's a lady who was seated on that table. I'm not sure if she's still there. She talked about mentorship. And she said that part of the problem is that, and she was saying, let's see what we can do in order for us to start mentoring those that are behind us. How will your daughter know of the work that you're doing? How will that young girl or young boy in the village know of the work that you're doing? When you are going through the training, I might have seen something on this. SWOT analysis. How do you analyze? All right? How do you look at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that are there within your organization in terms of ensuring that the rights of women, men, and young women are represented within the work that you are doing? Please, let me know if I need to shut up. 2 minutes. All right. So very quickly, I have gone most of these things. I just highlight in passing some of the things that I pick up as ways in which women have remained resilient. Irrespective of what you have seen, the model that you've seen that says that women are only, finding a place in this. So what they do, they create an agency for themselves. One way of doing that is individually, but also in terms of groups. I heard a lot of stories that are very heartbreaking. You see, my daughter is physically challenged. She relies on me and other family members. When they, that is the warriors, came to torture us, my husband was away at the petrol station where he worked. They did all manner of bad things to me and my daughter. I had to pick myself up after they left, carry my heart girl, and look for refuge at the Sacred Heart Cathedral. This is a woman talking after they've been, messed up by this marauding youth, the young men who are fighting. And they are being tortured because they don't belong. Don't belong means that they don't belong to the ethnic group within that area. So they are seen as aliens. They are seen as immigrants, for lack of a better terminology. So what does this woman do? How long will she stay at the cathedral? When she leaves there, what is she supposed to do? And this is just one story. What about those that lose their sons and their husbands? So they have to create an agency for themselves, find a way to forge forward. And one way of doing that collectively is forming groups, right? You have all these women groups and men groups in the villages. Women use these groups as stepping stones to overcome some of these challenges. I would have spoken more about that, but because of time, I'll move forward. I see women being used as sacrificial lambs. They make sacrifices for their children, their families. As I said, they are abducted by warriors to go and cook for them, to act as sex slaves. They are used as niches. Go and listen to what they are saying and bring the information back to us. And they watch their husbands die very, inhuman kind of deaths. And you hear stories of how a woman watched the husband cut into pieces, every part of his body cut as they watch, and how children suffer through the process. And you wonder whether there is energy to live afterwards. They sacrifice themselves to be raped by men instead of their daughters. A story is told of a woman who offered to join other women who had been abducted to cook for warriors in the forest during the post-election violence. In return, she negotiated with the warriors not to hurt her 13-year-old daughters, but allow her to join a friend's family. And later on, this girl was transported to her grandparents' home that was far away from this place. So these are some of the things that women have to go through. Yet, they have the energy to advocate. They have the energy to initiate peace processes. At the age of 2007, 2008, post-election violence in Burnt Forest, this is a place I went and we listened to this story. A Kikuyu woman who was renowned local liquor brewer and whose community seemed to be the target for ethnic cleansing, approached a priest and asked if, with the help of others, they could try convene a meeting with elders from the two ethnic groups to initiate a peace-building process. Although the said woman did not have much influential power, she knew the men, that is some of the elders, who came for the local brew in her den. Through her efforts, the church leadership was able to convene the first meeting in the local market and later on in the church compound for peace talks to start. Although she is not part of the meeting, since elders are mainly men in the two communities, she was a true silent advocate, brokering of the dialogue and dialogue process and reconciliation that happened in the end. This is a local liquor brewer, In this lady here, the lady in t-shirt, red t-shirt, I don't know her name, but this morning she talked about the different kinds of women that we have in our community. Some do not have power. And the fact that they do not have power to influence, it doesn't mean that they have nothing. They have something within themselves. When we are looking at, peace-building processes, do we look for liquor brewers? But look at what this lady did. She knows if I approach the priest, because he has power, he will be able to use his power to do something, and my community will be safe. All right? And so we can talk about many other things, including the economic activities that they are engaged in. But the question here is, the economic activities, even those that are initiated by the church itself, what is the position of women? We were told of the church starting projects like milk cooling plants, all right? But who is the shareholders in those milk cooling plants? It is men. It is not the women. If you go down at the very bottom of the chain, it is women who are doing the farming, but it is the men who are shareholders in these processes. I have alluded to social contract, and let me just say something that I found fascinating in this. So one of the ways in which social contracts are signed in the community, especially for communities like these ones that have a whole lot of culture, is through taking of oath, all right? And so we asked the priest, do you allow for this? Then the priest said, which is the lesser evil? Is it to facilitate for them to take oaths, or is it to let people die? Because once the oath is taken, that is like saying we have put our tools down, we will not fight. But if it is not taken, all right, and culturally oaths, for those who know, oaths are taken very seriously. But what we are seeing here, this is a process that is led by men, and it is a process for men. It is okay. It is okay at that point if it is going to stop the war and women, children, and men are not going to suffer. So what we see in this is, let's understand the processes that we take in a way that if it is space for men and it allows for men to take that space for good reasons, it is fine. It is fine. But where we feel that women's rights are being infringed, let's do something about it. And so as a way of concluding, I would have talked about this, but let me just go to conclusion and pick a few things. No, this one, last one, leadership. I picked, within that setup, they talk about peace committees. And these peace committees, most of them are led by men. Peace committees are made up of different villages, at most 5 villages, and it's a collaboration of the government, any community-based organizations, any civil society organizations that are working there. And it's an issue of just saying that let's start talking about peace and seeing where things are going wrong, and let's see what we can do about it. The reason why I picked on this particular one here, it is led by a woman. It is the only peace committee that is led by a woman. And so I had a conversation with this lady, and she told me that you don't know what leadership does, because I am able to hear things that I would have never heard. I am able to talk to women and men in ways that I would have never done. So it is important for us to encourage women leadership. And this is for men who are here and who are working in different places, in different organizations. It is important to do this, because we know what that position does. It opens up opportunities. And it also allows for you to know about things that you wouldn't have known if there was no, if you didn't have a female leader in that organization. So as a way of concluding, I will not use my words to conclude, but I have used words of women, what they feel about themselves, what they think about themselves, how they feel about the positions that they have and the situations that they find themselves in. If we sit and do nothing and pity ourselves, nothing will come to us. The church can only do this much, given that part of the problem is our culture. We will reach out when and where we can and hope to get support. The government is not very helpful. In fact, we rely on the church more through their money machinani activities. We will heal. We lack expertise, but we know our problems quite well. If only we could get the right, that should be right people, to partner with us, we will go far. So I hear support, expertise, partnership, equality, church, sensitive development, and peace building models. Thank you very much for listening.